Hello and welcome to the weekend edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, tonight we've got four big stories lined up for you. We will start off with the details and all angles covered of Lockdown 4.0, and we will tell you how your life might change starting tomorrow. And then we will go on to the migrants crisis, a massive migrant exodus that's happening from few of the states, and the influx that some of the other states are looking at is resulting in a massive humanitarian crisis. We will then also tell you about the details of this fight that's going on, the war of words between the centre as well as the Congress party, and bring you the details of the 20 lakh crore relief package that was announced by the central government. Today was the fifth and the last round of announcements that came in. What was announced, those are the details we'll bring to you here on the Urban Debate. But first up, let's start with Lockdown 4.0 that essentially begins tomorrow, effective midnight. Lockdown 4.0 will come into place. The detailed guidelines by the centre have just come out, and largely now more freedom is being given to the states to decide how they want to handle it, what should be the restrictions in which areas. But let me actually just take you through some of the key takeaways before we go across and get you more details. Takeaway 1 is that lockdown has been extended till May 31st. Of course, some of the states like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Telangana and Punjab had already decided on this even before the centre came out with its announcement. States will get to decide on zoning, what should be a red zone, orange zone or green zone, and the activities in these zones. What is not allowed still is the domestic and international travel. No metro services will be allowed. Significant restriction continues on public transport, only for essentials there. The curfew between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. will continue. So the night curfew continues. Schools and colleges will remain shut. Interesting change as far as the sports complexes are concerned. Joining me right now is our managing editor Vinay Tiwari. But before I come across to you, Vinay, quickly let me go across to Ayushman, who's standing by with more details. Ayushman, first let's talk about things that haven't changed and will continue to remain shut.
Tanvi, the congregation, any kind of congregation is not permitted as it was in the previous versions of lockdown. The domestic air travel and the international air travel continue to be closed. The railway movement is still to be decided. That has not been declared at what will happen, because we have seen the partial resumption in services. School, colleges, educational institutions will be closed. The hotel and restaurants will continue to close. All the cinema halls, any kind of religious gathering, religious places for public continue to be closed, Tanvi.
Okay, so that's as far as the services and the institutions that remain closed. But Ayushman, there are some changes, some different things in this centre's guidelines versus what we saw the last time, and you spotted and marked those out for us. Take us through that. What is new, the big changes?
Well, Tanvi, if you see the current situation, the MHA has in fact given certain kind of relaxation, and in that the states have been given, the very significant one is that states have been given, they have been demanding it for long. Now they have been given the power to decide which will be the red zone, orange zone and green zone, and also the activities permitted will be decided by them. The intra-state movement of buses has been given it to the states, and also the interstate has also been given to the state, provided that both the originating state and the destination states, they should be there in tandem. At the same time, the staggered work timing and Arogya Setu app download has also been included. The stadiums and sporting complexes, though the spectators are not allowed, but they have been allowed to open, and the restaurants have been told to keep their kitchen open for home delivery. This is something which we can take as the major changes that we have witnessed. The restaurants were told to be open in previous lockdown as well, Tanvi, but the interstate movement of buses in after the coordination between two states have been allowed.
Okay, Ayushman, thanks so much for really breaking that down for us, the circular that's come out. Now, what does this mean For more perspective, let's go across to Vinay Tiwari. Vinay, according to you, what is the biggest takeaway from this guideline?
Well, one big takeaway, Tanvi, which is not written anywhere, but it's purely interpretative, is this: that I wish that they had issued these guidelines earlier in the morning or possibly even yesterday. Because remember, the minute you say that the states have been given the authority to decide on norms for color coding the districts, the states will need time to plan that. And obviously, since the existing rules come into force from midnight tonight, none of the states have enough time to actually plan that out. So we are pretty much going to lose another couple of days or so before the decision on actually easing of some restrictions at the state level will come in play. In fact, we've already seen Karnataka has bought 2 more days. They've extended the guideline, the restrictions for 19th, and in the meanwhile, they will have cabinet meetings and other discussions to actually implement this. So I really only wish that the MHA, knowing fully well that today was the last day, could have issued this earlier in the day and would have given some states, all the states, some time to actually plan out the easing of operations in many districts. Because remember, a lot of the businesses and people are fairly desperate to restart operations and get some bit of the economy rolling back again. Having said that, I think the big takeaway and the biggest important point is what Ayushman mentioned, that the states have now got the authority to decide which of their districts should be color coded as green, red or orange. And accordingly, then follow the restriction guidelines that have been issued by the MHA. For me, Tanvi, I'm a huge sports lover, and I'm sure that many of the other viewers of ours are also big sports lovers. I am delighted anytime that a sporting activity is moves towards resumption. The very fact that they are actually allowing the stadia to be opened, even if it might be just for the practice of the athletes, is a good sign. Because nothing is a sign of normalcy more than sporting activity resuming. So hopefully we can see that happening in a couple of months from now, and sports will be back in action. 3, from the point of the viewers, I think what is safe to say is that you still can't fly across different cities like you could in the past, and that's something that possibly was expected because many states were opposed to that idea of allowing air travel, as well as regular passenger train services are not being allowed either. So public transport in terms of interstate and intercity and international still remains prohibited. But I think the good news is that they have allowed interstate movement provided the 2 states agree. And that's where I have a bit of a worry, because I do expect, and as we were discussing a short while back, greater chaos at the borders, because states have not exactly got their strategy right. And most of the states are squeamish about allowing people from the other states to enter their boundaries, even if the MHA order now allows that, Tanvi.
Yes, in fact, I was going to ask you about the sporting activities as well, Vinay. This decision that's come in, would one expect that maybe down the line we can start looking at some kind of sporting activities being held, or would this largely still be for training and practice related purposes?
Look, the first stage of resuming any kind of sporting activity is to get the athletes back in shape. Because remember, sports is something that really cannot be managed indoors, especially outdoor sports. You can't do much to keep yourself in peak shape. So in that sense, it's a start. And I'm actually, with this particular order, I'm now hopeful that we will see live sport action sometime during this year for sure, because we are in May. And remember, one of the big talking points in India was whether IPL can happen this year or not. Remember, a lot of money is riding on IPL as well. Almost 4,500 crore is the kind of money that just the BCCI expects to lose if IPL doesn't happen this year. And then there is a whole lot of subsidiary revenue that's linked to it in terms of broadcasting rights, in terms of sponsorships, and in terms of in-stadia rights that a lot of them get. Of course, I don't see the spectators returning to the stadiums anytime soon, but I'm very sure, and we know from reports and from having spoken to people in the industry, that most of the broadcasters and sporting authorities and agencies are already talking about how to restart sports without the spectators, and how to make it more innovative simply by the use of technology. I know that the broadcasters who hold the rights for cricket in India are at a fairly advanced stage of figuring out technological solutions to keep the engagement with the audience going. So that apart, in terms of the regular activity, I think one of the big slight dampeners is the government is still not comfortable with the idea of opening up malls, because they remain in the overall restricted category even now. And remember, there has been a bit of a debate in the last couple of weeks or so where mall owners have argued that their ability to do safety guidelines and containment is better than mandis and markets, and hence they should be allowed to operate. But that, of course, the government has not agreed to, possibly because they fear that there will be a large-scale influx of people who've not exactly stepped out of their homes for a long time. So some bit of positive news that states get the freedom. But I think we till 31st at least, large-scale movement of people to different cities and normalization of life is still not going to happen, Tanvi.
Yes, and when we've just got, the Delhi Chief Minister tweeting right now saying that the centre's guidelines are largely in line with the proposal sent by the Delhi government based on suggestions of lakhs of Delhiites. Here is the important bit though. He says we've used the lockdown period to prepare our healthcare system if corona cases increase, but it is now time to relax the restrictions to some extent. So there is the indication coming in from the Delhi government that some amount of restriction relaxation will take place. Delhi Chief Minister has repeatedly said that they are ready, and then all the districts of Delhi cannot continue to be in a lockdown red zone mode. And now that that freedom is being given to the states, we will have to see how each of the states decide. Like when I was pointing out, this doesn't mean that tomorrow morning you can wake up in whichever city you are and go to the marketplace and everything will be open. But it does mean that in the coming days, all of next week, we will begin to get details from each of the state governments on what their policies are going to be. Thank you, Vinay Tiwari, for joining us, and giving us your perspective on it. Let's also quickly bring in some experts to help us understand how they are viewing this big set of guidelines that's come in. Remember, viewers, with each lockdown phase, we are actually looking at some more relief coming in. Now, that doesn't mean that the cases are not going to go up, because the cases continue to go up. But we have to find a way of living with this virus. We have to find a way of also saving our economy, saving jobs and saving livelihoods. So let's say good evening to Amit Sachdeva, CFO of Grofers, who joins us this evening. Lalit Agarwal, Chairman and Managing Director of VMart and Chairman of the Northern Council of Retailers Association of India, and Girdhar R. Babu is a Professor and Head for Life Course Epidemiology in Indian Institute of Public Health, PHFI, Bengaluru. Let me first up go across to Mr. Lalit Agarwal and ask him this question. Mr. Agarwal, does this give you hope that we will now begin to see a lot more of shops and perhaps markets opening up, though in a regulated manner?
Hi Tanvi, good evening. No, I think the messages which is coming in is little more confusing and is adding on to the chaos which is already there. So I think the state government and then the local district magistrate and the collectors taking those decisions is really creating a large amount of chaos right now, and retailers are now tired because they don't have any other option. 40 million people working in retail, 20 million people working for non-essentials are really given no guidance, no benefit from the government side. I think the employees are really struggling and the retailers are struggling, and the struggle will be exaggerated now, I feel, because there is no clarity and it doesn't seem that there will be more relaxation coming in, and we are finding it difficult. I think just this news coming in late at the night is once again going to create more chaos, and even in the green zones where we were, I don't know how are they once again going to be once again dividing the green, orange and then the red zone. So I think government should really come out with a very, very strong messages, because MHA, whatever MHA comes out, is not being either adhered by the states and the local authorities. And I don't know why is MHA issuing the orders. And so it's a confusion for retailers. This is what I feel.
Well, I appreciate your honesty in your reaction, Mr. Agarwal. It's hard to come by, in these days. But let me ask you this question: is your concern, about the fact that now that the states have the power in their hands to decide on the zones and the activities allowed, it's just going to create a lot of chaos, because each district may have a different set of rules, and that just makes it difficult for the entire supply chain and the end shopkeeper?
Yes, there's no clarity, and even the state government or the local administration doesn't have any clarity. They come up with their own set of rules. They don't know how to define a store, how to define retail activity. Somewhere they're asking non-essential to get opened once a week. Somewhere there are twice a week, or somewhere alternative days a week. There are 4 hours of working. Somewhere they says air conditioned can't be operated. And there's utter chaos, and there's no standard guideline which one can follow. And retailers like us who are are operating through 65 stores and largely in small town, and we don't know where is the tomorrow, what order, what instruction should we give to our people, how should we handle our supply chain, what should we communicate to our customers, because customers also want product, because there are a lot of calls for the customers where a new child has born, an infant is there, they want some clothes, they want some product, and there is nothing that they are able to serve, we are able to service. So we are not, there is no clarity. Even our team members are asking, so what should be our approach, and how can we pay our salaries, how are we going to pay our rentals, and what is going to happen to those MSMEs which government is trying to protect, who are largely dependent with retailers, because ultimately all the end consumption and the 40% of the consumption happens through retailers. So retailers has to be opened up. If the retailer doesn't open, how does the industry work, and what will industry produce for? Because whatever production the industry does has to be sold through retailer. There's so much of multiplying effect which retail close down gives us. I think the government is not realizing that, and it is a high time that government should understand that retailers has to get opened up, and especially the larger retailers, because they are maintaining all those strict discipline, hygiene, and care, which is supposed to be taken up for a safe shopping environment and safety that can be promoted. And economic activities has to be brought in back by the government.
Well,
that is very much important.
Well, as we've seen, Mr. Agarwal, in the last few instances as well, that after the initial set of guidelines, there are numerous clarifications that come, which may or may not help with the confusion that's being created on ground. So we'll wait and watch what happens in the coming few days. But Amit Sachdeva, what's your own sense? Was even the delivery services and the e-commerce segment also hoping that some more of relaxation comes in via the central government?
I think for us, it's pretty much business as usual, because, for us, lockdown 3 brought in, most of the relaxations that we wanted in terms of easing out the pain of the supply chain. So it's the natural demand created by the lockdowns has been there for online grocery, and our initial challenges, with supply chain in the first few weeks has anyways been taken care of. So I think for us, we are not, in the same situation as Mr. Agarwal talked about. We are trying to reach out to as many, consumers as possible who were stuck in this lockdown. And I think the changes that we've brought, it's still early, we've gotten the MHA guidelines pretty late in the evening, and we will see how they impact us in the next few weeks. But from the overall summary, I think this has actually been unusual for us, Tanvi, right?
Okay, but even for a business model like yours, it essentially depends on how easily the retailers are able to get their supplies, and the kind of manpower that is available to you, their movement in terms of home delivery. In that sense, is there any more ironing out that is required, or is that pretty much now clear and settled?
So I think we had, disruption, especially in our, in Bombay, Pune, where the containment zones were high. There were some spots in Delhi where the incidence of the infection was high. And I think that is where we stepped in a little ahead of the time in terms of, not even letting those orders, out for delivery. So I think this will help us in terms of opening cross-border. We were essential services. We were able to get passes, and all the challenges of cross-border interstate travel was not there primarily for us. But I think this new guidelines should help us in further easing out, the challenges we had on the supply chain of labor not being available to us. So we hired some 2,500-3,000 people. It was a big challenge for us getting them trained in a lockdown scenario. But we are looking at hiring at least 5,000. So, the challenges on the learning curve have been there, but I think those were initial days for us. And I think we are pretty much back to business as usual right now, Tanvi.
All right, let me also bring in Dr. Babu. Dr. Babu, from a health perspective and a policy perspective, do you think we're still being a little overcautious, or that, this is the way to go forward and take our own time in opening up? The virus isn't going anywhere. We have to get used to it and, learn to design our lives around it. So then why aren't we doing that already? Why are we still insisting on a strict lockdown?
Um, Hello, everyone. Hello, Tanvi, and the esteemed guests on the show. This is the time for us to make sure that we believe in the system that is taking care of the entire, life and livelihood in this country. No one is taking it lightly. If there is an extension, this has been after due consideration. Again, I'm not part of the government, but I have been a witness to how the government is deciding on several issues, both at the state level and the national level. So, therefore, what considerations they have taken is both in terms of preparedness and how do you actually come out of the lockdown. There is a plan. And why the confusion exists is once you issue a policy guidance, then rules will have to be made. Then regulations will have to be done based on the local authorities. So it will take 1 to 2 time. So there will be initial confusion. But at some point of time, we'll come out of the lockdown. That is when is decided by the kind of epidemic curve that we are seeing now. Currently, we are in very encouraging situation and we are being envied all over the world. We have the lowest mortality compared to all the other countries. This has been able to possible only because we started the lockdown response much earlier on. And during the same time, the health system preparedness has considerably improved. Now, the only way to get out of this is improved surveillance. Now, already we are seeing that the responsibility is given to the states. And I have complete confidence in the state governments in the way they are going to respond to it. There is a feeling I heard from in the show that saying that states don't have time to implement orders. That's not true. States have been preparing. They were not waiting for today night. They were preparing for the last 1 week or so in terms of scenario A, B, C. Now they will implement the best option out there. There are real issues, there are real problems, and I can give you assurance from what I have seen that they're addressing these in a very serious manner.
But Mr. Rao, the economic activities have to be also seen in simultaneous way. And India being a young country, we might have been the lowest in the morbidity and that ratio. But I think in the economic slowdown and the economic impact which is going to happen to our country, which is not so strong, and large part of our people base and large part of our businesses are very small sized businesses. I think we are going to suffer a huge loss there, and it is going to be real utter chaos and lot of poverty and lot of hunger, because people are driving out people are not paying them, and there will be lot of confusion arising in the systems which is very difficult to get controlled.
I hear you, and I think we should stick to our disciplines. I shouldn't be advising anything on the economy, nor should on public health advice should be coming from the people who are not looking at the pandemic response. My sincere request to all of us is, let's look at this from a very neutral point of view. There are problems, there are challenges. We are going through extreme troubles, both social and economic. At the same time, the government is cognizant of all of these things. It's not that they're blind to economic challenges. In fact, the major thrust of the country was on the economic progress. So if they are doing this, it's with due consideration. So let's respect the kind of leadership that we have, both at the national and the state level. It is going to take a bigger toll, but there is a way to come out of it. Let's have some patience.
I don't know what is going to change, because what is going to change, we don't understand, because this corona is there, going to remain there for the next 6 months. And how do we handle the issue? And if we don't start learning from now, how will we handle our country? I'm really worried about it now.
That's actually, just to add to what you're saying, Mr. Agarwal, and take it back to Dr. Babu. Dr. Babu, if the states have used this time well, and now we're essentially looking at 2 full months of the lockdown, we're just a week away from that, 7 full weeks of a lockdown, And if we've used this time well enough to build the health infrastructure and to plan it out once we lift the lockdown, then why shouldn't we do it? Because as Mr. Agarwal is saying, there will be, some setbacks. There will be sudden rise in cases, which we will have to handle. But at some point, we have to get the rest of the part of our life also going. So where is this concern? Do you think that healthcare infrastructure-wise, we are still not ready?
No. So let's look at what's happening in the country. The only goal that we have now is reduce the number of deaths, mortality, and that has been able to do because of the greater response from best most states in the India. However, there are few challenges that we need to take care. Each state is like a different country by the region and the population that we have. So there is varied preparation, whereas the overall on the country there is a good preparation. However, this decision of extending another 15 days is a decision taken after looking at all the states, not just one or two states. So in this time, one is health system response, second is reduction in mortality, and the third most important thing is, as you see in the last two extensions, there has been gradual release of some of the activities. Even now with this extension, there are many activities that are permitted. So they are seeing how system is prepared slowly, gradually, over temporally, geographically, they are opening up. Now the decision is with the state. If one state wants to change the entire, the classification system, states are free to do it. Health is state subject. However, even the state government will do only with due credence to the evidence that they have. Yes, it is challenging times. Yes, we have improved our health system, but they're also acting in response to the real threat out there, which cannot be explained everything, because the state government and the industry either they should have more interaction with each other, or they should read all the guidelines. But there is this confusion. But in this time, we should not spread fear. We should not spread panic. But we should be more careful in how we engage during this time. This is a tough time.
I agree with you, and I don't think anybody here, Dr. Babu, wants to spread panic at all. The idea behind these conversations is to highlight what's good and what's not, what are the issues that industry is also facing,
Tanvi,
or policy-wise, or as a common man we are facing, that the government can listen to, register. Yeah.
I want to also highlight the point of migrant labor getting back to their villages and their towns, because that is also once again adding that chaos and shifting the whole corona piece, because that is also getting the addition. We are not maintaining the lockdown. We are enabling the migrant labor to shift to their base locations and their home locations, and which is once again bringing in corona in small towns where we were not there, where there was no evidence of corona. Because that is what I think is we are trying to, on one side, try to create more lockdown, and on the other side we are trying to release the workers and then going back to their places. I mean, I don't know where is the policy heading towards.
If we restart more economic activity, Mr. Agarwal, I'm sure you'll also agree that the migrants will also have a lesser reason to go back home. If they are able to earn their livelihood here in the cities, if they're able to get food and have their jobs, then automatically some part of this exodus problem will also get resolved without anybody forcing them to stay back. I just have one more question for Mr. Sachdeva before, I thank all of you. Mr. Sachdeva, in your business model, currently is there space to deliver goods outside of the essential goods, or would that be something that you would have wanted the government to do? Because gradually what we are seeing is, since it's been 2 months and people are stuck in their homes, there are more and more things that they want. How much of this is allowed as part of home delivery?
So I think, Tanvi, we grocers is actually in a very grocery heavy platform, in terms of 70 to 80% of our platform being food business. But I think one thing I agree in terms of the non-essentials, I think personally all of us with kids actually need some of those non-essentials, and I think it was a big challenge. But in lockdown 3, some of those relaxations came in, and some of our new categories have totally moved in from what we used to deliver earlier. So I think it's been a mixed bag, I would say. We've opened up few grocery related non-essentials, but 20% of our business was impacted. from those stipulations being put in terms of non-essentials. I think if you look at it, the search on our platforms for for things like yoga mats and some of the other non-food related things have actually gone up significantly. Trimmers, hair color, some of those categories is just the demand for those has actually gone out of the window, and I think understandably, because people couldn't go out to take care of those things.
Yeah. Okay, I'm completely out of time. I'm sorry, Mr. Agarwal. I will not have time to come to you, but I appreciate the fact.
Shops are not being allowed to open to deliver the goods to the customer. So we are even not able to do the digital sales to our customers through our stores because we are not able to open up the stores for deliveries. There also we need some relaxation.
Yes, and all across the world, if you see those who are allowed to do home delivery, all the e-commerce guys and retailers, there is no restriction on what kind of goods. Even the non-essentials are allowed, so at least some amount of consumption continues, and people who need to buy other products can do so. Well, we await now for each of the states to come out with their own set of guidelines, their own plan, and then perhaps I will have all of you on a conversation again. But thank you so much for joining us right now. Here is what it is, viewers. The guidelines for lockdown till May 31st for the next 2 weeks are here. The big change is the fact that the central government has now given the power to the state governments to decide on zoning. What should be a red zone or orange zone or green zone, and what activities can be allowed in these zones, which means that in a few days you will get clarity on what more can be allowed in your city and your town, depending on what your state government decides. Of course, if you are in a containment zone, then nothing can be done. Only essential services will be allowed. So the rules for containment zones are very, very clear. And the larger things, which we knew will pretty much remain shut, cinemas, schools, colleges, your theaters, malls, swimming pools, gymnasiums, these institutions will remain shut for 2 more weeks. Restaurants and hotels will remain shut for 2 more weeks. All that is allowed is home delivery from the restaurants. So that's the only specific change in this that has been mentioned, apart from the fact that sports complexes can open up, but not for spectators. So you and I can't go and watch a match, but if you're a sports person, you can definitely go and train there, and that's the big news for you. This is as far as lockdown 4.0 is concerned. Now let's move on to story number 2 here on the Urban Debate, and we're going to put the spotlight on the migrants crisis. It's a massive outrage that is now beginning to show on the roads. For 2 months, our daily wage workers, our laborers, the working class migrants have been quiet and silent. When they ran out of patience, they began to find ways of getting home to their villages because they were jobless, they had no food, they had no money, and they had no hope left. And so they decided, whether or not buses and trains are provided, they will find a way to go home, even if it means walking for hundreds of kilometers or cycling for hundreds of kilometers. As a result, as you know, viewers, finally the government woke up and said, no, wait, we'll give you trains and we'll give you buses. But not enough is being done. And the anger is now visible. Here are multiple instances that we've got of the migrant outrage resulting in vandalism, ruckus, protest, damaging of property, breaking of police barricades, and in one case a journalist getting injured and getting beaten up because these people were frustrated that their trains were being cancelled and they were not being allowed. And it's not just one state. From Gujarat to Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, we've got these instances coming in from various states. I actually want to begin with what happened in Rajkot. Now in Rajkot, a train that was meant to leave with migrant workers and take them to Uttar Pradesh didn't start this morning. And there was confusion about what was happening, if there will be a train or not, and whether it will go, take them to their home towns and villages today or not. As a result, hundreds of them came out on streets, protested, got angry, damaged vehicles, created ruckus, vandalized the vehicles, and in that process, even a journalist who was simply doing his job, recording and reporting what was happening on ground, had to bear the brunt of it so badly that he got a head injury and 6 stitches on his head. Really disturbing visuals coming in from Rajkot today, and Disha in fact was tracking that story for us. Disha, we've seen many instances in Gujarat where migrants have been angry and have protested, but take us through the details of what happened in Rajkot today.
Well, that's right. And in fact, today the protest that we saw was the seventh such protests in the state. If we talk about, we have seen earlier protests in Surat, and today we saw in Rajkot where 500 migrants actually protested right there on the Rajkot highway, is what we understand, because there was a train that was supposed to leave at 11:30 a.m. from Rajkot, taking all of these migrant workers to UP. But at that point in time, last minute, the train had to reschedule. It got cancelled because the Gujarat government said that they did not get any permission from the UP government to start the train. So that was the entire reason why the train got cancelled. And because the migrant laborers are frustrated, they are angry, they have no work in the last 2 months, their anger only rose, and that really, happened on the streets. They started vandalizing, they started attacking people. They also started pelting stones at the police men who were there doing their job. Even the local journalist had to bear the brunt, who was there doing his job. He was also badly beaten up. We are looking at the videos and the visuals that are doing the rounds at this point in time. In fact, a lot of police security had to be called in. It took 2 hours almost for the police to control the entire situation, to control the mob. And despite several assurances, of course, they did not really budge. The protest went for nearly 2 hours. The journalist who was attacked, he also received head injuries and 5 stitches. He was taken to the nearest hospital. And right now, as we all know, that even as we speak, Tanvi, the train has not started from Rajkot yet for UP. In fact, Indian Railways had also tweeted about it, saying that it will start at 5 o'clock today in the evening, but that has not started yet. So migrants are still there waiting to get back to their homes. So this is the entire incident that we are looking at. In fact, Gujarat government has very categorically time and again said that 3 lakh migrant workers have been sent from Gujarat to their home states, and each and every migrant worker and laborer will be sent back.
Yes, but they're saying it, yet they're cancelling trains. And if the railways came out and claimed that they've now gotten permission from Uttar Pradesh and Ghazipur city administration to start the train, then I don't know what's happened in the last few hours and why that hasn't happened. But Disha, thanks so much for bringing us that story. And these are the visuals that we got. Unfortunately, this is not the first time in Gujarat. The trains were cancelled to Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. Now, what can be possibly the communication gap unless the receiving states don't want these people to come back right now? All are BJP governed states. Why can't they have a better communication between them to avoid such situations? And one of the reasons there also is the fact, viewers, that in Uttar Pradesh you're seeing a large influx of people suddenly in the last few days, where the state is struggling to handle that situation. Now we'll go to that in just a bit, but first up I want to also bring you an instance from Bihar, and this is what happened in Sitamarhi, where migrants lost patience and there was a fight that broke out at a quarantine center for who should be screened first. These are the guys who had returned and had to be screened before they can move on and with their lives and be in that quarantine center. But there was a fight that happened within the quarantine center itself. Sham, in fact, is with us with more details. Sham, tell us what happened in Sitamarhi today.
Well, in Sitamarhi, at this quarantine center, it's been said that the migrants clashed among themselves over who would be screened first. Because remember, as a large number of trains, the Shramik Express trains, have been arriving at several stations, and it is being said that a Shramik train had arrived at the Sitamarhi railway station, from where these migrants were taken to a local school for screening. Now, it is during this time that there was an issue over something which happened, after which the migrants clashed among themselves. It's been said that everyone were losing patience because they had been traveling for many hours and they were hungry and without water. So everyone wanted to be screened first. And during this due course, it's been said that the migrants clashed among themselves. The visuals clearly show that how they used lathis and sticks to attack each other. Despite the police presence, the police could not do much because certainly they were outnumbered by the large number of migrants, workers who were present there and who had clashed among themselves. It was only after local administration was informed that more reinforcement was brought into place, and then the situation could be brought under control.
Okay, all right, Shyam. Thanks so much for joining us and bringing us that update on the story that emerged from Sitamarhi. Now, from Bihar, let's move to Uttar Pradesh, where we also saw one instance of ruckus that got created. Actually, many instances in Uttar Pradesh today as the pile-up of people began, and there was quite a bit of chaos in various parts. In fact, migrant workers blocked the Mathura-Agra highway and created ruckus, as no arrangements were being made for them to return to their native places. Amir is joining me with more. Amir, we will come to the larger problem that UP is facing, but let's talk about what happened in the Mathura-Agra highway incident, where people had to resort to blocking the highway. Amir, take us through what happened there.
Well, this is a practical problem which is being faced by the migrant laborers as well as the district administrations, wherein they are actually seeking transport to ferry them to their native places. And this is not just a one-off case wherein on the border of Madhya Pradesh and UP, this incident has happened. We've seen similar incidents playing out on the border between UP and Haryana and Delhi, also, on the borders with Bihar, wherein the respective district administrations, especially the ones who actually fall on the border with other neighboring states, do not have the resources at their disposal to let each of such migrants who've arrived in from outside to sit on the buses there and move towards their native villages. And now, over the last 24 hours, that confusion that has existed on the ground has escalated, because now the Chief Minister's office here in UP has ordered that the policemen on duty should not allow any such non-passenger vehicle, including trucks, etc., to carry these migrant laborers. Also, they should not be allowed to move around in the state or cross over to one state to the other state on foot or on bicycles. And in fact, the policemen and the district administrations have been instructed to stop all such migrant workers, to make arrangements for their stay in a temporary shelter, to provide them with food and water and sanitation, and then arrange for vehicles for them, especially UPSRTC provided buses who can actually ferry them back to their homes and native places. Now, this is a process which actually needs time to get functional, and it definitely, therefore, has left out a lot of lacunas which are quite glaringly visible, because the district administrations and the government have not been able to make arrangement for buses in time. And therefore, the migrant laborers are increasingly losing patience. And we've seen similar scenes playing out at various checkposts on borders between different districts, as well as borders between different states, wherein district administration is actually carrying out the orders issued by the government, but they do not have the resources at their disposal to cater to such large and increasing number of migrants. And therefore, this confusion. For example, we witnessed similar scenes there, confusion on the border between Haryana and UP in the Saharanpur division, wherein a large number of over 12,000 migrant workers had congregated, the ones who had actually traveled from places as far as Bhatinda, Jodhpur, in Rajasthan, as well as various places in Punjab and Haryana, and they had congregated there at Saharanpur border because the police was not allowing them to go forward. And therefore, there were instances when they were almost at confrontation with the police officials there. Thankfully, the district magistrate, the commissioner were there. They actually reached there in time and arranged for, calm down the laborers and arranged for transport for them. And it definitely takes a much longer time than what is being put forward by the government. For example, in this particular case, the migrants had to wait for 2 to 3 days to get buses to move towards eastern part of Uttar Pradesh and their native places in Bihar. And moreover, the problem is compounded when you are picking up laborers belonging to one particular state from another state border, and you have to crisscross the entire state about 500, 600, 700 kilometers and leave them on the border with another state, and the district administration there is not ready to take them. So there are a lot of practical problems there. They need to be ironed out, and perhaps it will take time before it gets smooth for all such migrant laborers.
Okay, all right. In fact, what you were saying, Amir, is actually what we saw unfold through the day, the kind of chaos that we saw at the border areas and the sudden influx that's actually taken place. 1.5 lakh migrants, the UP administration claims, actually landed up within a day. And by the time the state scrambled to get the resources going, it obviously led to a massive chaos. Amir, thanks for joining us. I just want to play out what the additional chief secretary also told us earlier in the day, because this is important. This is where he is acknowledging that, such big influx has taken place. Fact of the matter is, migrants have been on the move for many weeks now. Why was the state caught off guard? Listen in.
मुख्यमंत्री जी ने आज सुबह ही हमें ये कहा कि जो भी बॉर्डर्स पर भीड़ जो आई है, जो भारी संख्या में लोग अन्य प्रदेशों से आए हैं, जो भारी संख्या में लोग विभिन्न वाहनों से आए हैं, जो बड़ी संख्या में लोग पैदल चल के आए हैं, जो बड़ी संख्या में लोग साइकिल से भी चल के आए हैं, हर हालत में उनको बॉर्डर पर व्यवस्थित रूप से संवाद बनाकर, संवेदना दिखाकर, हर हालत में उनको भोजन की व्यवस्था कर कर, पानी पीने की व्यवस्था करके, उनको बसों को बैठाकर, जो भी साधन मिले उन पर बैठाकर, और अब उन्होंने आदेश ये दिया है कि झांसी से ट्रेन में बैठाकर, मथुरा से ट्रेन में बैठाकर, गाजियाबाद से ट्रेन में बैठाकर, आगरा से ट्रेन में बैठाकर, प्रयागराज से भी ट्रेन में बैठाकर, मेरठ और सहारनपुर क्षेत्र में भी ट्रेन में से बैठाकर, उन्होंने ये भी आदेश किया है कि नोएडा से भी ट्रेन में बैठाकर, साथ साथ जो है कहीं भी झांसी के अलावा महोबा में भी अगर ज़रूरत पड़े तो वहाँ ट्रेन की व्यवस्था की जाए। ये एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण निर्णय मुख्यमंत्री जी ने लिया है कि जहाँ तक संभव हो, कोई भी व्यक्ति जो है कहीं भी, किसी भी प्रदेश के किसी भी कोने में, किसी भी जनपद में, वो या तो ट्रेन से चले।
Well, one more instance also coming in from Madhya Pradesh, where you saw migrants really lose patience. Again, it was an area which was seeing significant amount of build-up of people who wanted to cross the border and go to neighboring states. In Reva, migrants headed to Uttar Pradesh got really angry when they were stopped, and they really broke through the police barricades. Govind, in fact, is joining me live with this story. Govind, despite the government's efforts to ferry them across the state, it doesn't help if this massive build-up begins at the border and then migrants have nowhere to go.
Yeah, absolutely. This was quite unfortunate, which occurred there at the border of Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh in Rewa district, where a kind of a chaotic condition created when accumulated migrant laborers in number around 10,000. They started asking for the food and other arrangements which were not adequate there. Then after at around midnight, the chaotic condition created there, and police had to use the light lathi charge on these migrant laborers, and that kind of action also has been objected by even by the BJP MLA Narayan Tripathi, that this was a kind of injustice which was played with these kind of migrant labor. They are just coming from their working place to their native place. They are moving for that. In this midnight, the chaotic condition was there to control this all circumstances. There was the local administration of Rewa district, whether the commissioner, collector, and SP, they all were there. And now the condition is somewhat manageable, and this is really not easy just to manage the big number of migrant laborers. As you know that state governments are just trying their best for managing the conditions which are appearing. You can understand that those laborers definitely trying to be back their native place in this pandemic. But now understand that this is the part of the circumstances. We can also expect that such circumstances definitely occur if in such large numbers migration will occur.
All right, Govind, thanks so much for joining us and bringing us those updates. Well, let's move on and get you the latest from the Finance Ministry and the government's announcements as far as the relief package is concerned. Today was the fifth and the final installment for the 20 lakh crore package that the Prime Minister had earlier announced. And here is what essentially came out of it. 40,000 crore additional funding under the Rural Employment Scheme, the Manrega scheme, has now been allocated. The government also decided that they will decriminalize the Companies Act and rules under it so that the criminal offences are actually removed, the non-bailable offences are actually removed from that. They also brought in some relief for insolvency proceedings, making it easier for companies who may be going through tough times in a sense that they don't have to go through the bankruptcy law or insolvency proceedings immediately. Then there was a special emphasis also on education, where the government said that more of the television channels and digital medium will be used to impart education in times of a lockdown and pandemic. More investment will be done as far as health infrastructure is concerned in all of the districts. Along with this, a new public sector enterprise policy was also introduced, which will essentially pave way for more private firms in the public sector segments, where essentially you've only seen government-owned companies, the crucial segments which are there, the strategic sectors which are present, and the number of state-owned companies will then come down. The Finance Minister also confirmed that this entire 20 lakh crore math includes the 1.7 lakh crore package that was earlier announced in March end, and also the relief measures taken by the Reserve Bank of India amounting to roughly 8 lakh crores.
Particular sector which is notified as strategic, if there are too many public sector enterprises, they will either be brought together to form bigger public sector enterprises, and in that process we will not have more than 4 of them. Government will now allocate an additional 40,000 crores. This way will ensure that during the monsoon season, and since many of them have gone back to their villages, and if they enroll, they will get the jobs. Lab networks in rural areas are not adequate. So public health labs will be set up at all block levels, not just in district, but block levels. We will have public health labs. One other thing which will benefit the MSMEs is the minimum threshold to initiate insolvency proceedings is now raised to 1 crore from 1 lakh, which will therefore insulate the MSMEs.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this weekend edition of the Urban Debate. Thank you so much for joining us.